As we already know, having the right attitude and conduct is very important while listening to teachings. Otherwise, we receive very few benefits. Many people listen to teachings very often, yet the teachings fail to bring them significant effect and do not merge into their minds. Why? The reason pertains to their ways of listening to teachings. The fact that we are listening to the Mahayana teachings in this life is the fruit of merits accumulated over millions of kalpas. We need to create causes and conditions to ensure the Dharma infiltrates into our mind. If not, the benefits we receive from listening to teachings will be very limited. Regarding the conduct to avoid while listening to teachings, we've already covered the 3 defects of the pot and the 6 stains. Today, we'll cover the 5 wrong ways of remembering. During this study, we should examine whether we have wrong ways of remembering. If we have these faults, we should start to eliminate them. Otherwise, our listening will hardly bring any substantial effect in transforming the mind. 2.13. The 5 wrong ways of remembering. Avoid remembering the words but forgetting the meaning, or remembering the meaning but forgetting the words. Avoid remembering both but with no understanding, remembering them out of order, or remembering them incorrectly. Some people pay excessive attention to elegant turns of phrase when listening to teachings. If the teaching is full of elegant words, beautiful phrases, idioms, quotes, or couplets, they really enjoy it. This happens often with Dharma students who have received more worldly higher education or who stand out in writing. The first thing that such students pay attention to while reading a scripture or a Dharma book is its wording and phrasing. If the writing is not to their taste, they simply put the book or scripture aside and don't even bother to analyze the meaning of the words. What we most need is to understand the profound meaning of the Dharma. Studying the Dharma is not for training us to become writers. However elegant the writing might be, if it carries no substantial meaning, such writing brings little benefit to the readers. As we have already seen, the words of many past eminent masters are plain, but the content goes straight to our hearts and benefits us greatly. If we only focus on the wording and phrasing, commenting, "This verse rhymes well," or "That idiom fits well," while neglecting the profound meaning, then we are like a child gathering flowers. A child may not have any specific purpose in mind when gathering flowers. They may simply find the flowers pretty and pick them mindlessly. This analogy means we only go after external enjoyment and fail to attain internal inspiration. Those who love poetry and rhetoric tend to have such problems. So do those who delve too deeply into Buddhist logic. This can also apply to some Buddhists who often engage in recitation practice, yet don't really understand what they recite. These people recite classic sutras, such as the Diamond Sutra, or names of Buddhas, such as Amitabha, on a daily basis. They like to count how many times they've recited, yet make no attempt to analyze the profound meaning of the texts. While such recitation does bring merit, when asked the meaning of the sutra, they become evasive, saying, "I am just an ordinary person, so understanding the sutra is beyond my capacity." Reciting the sutra without understanding the meaning pertains to the wrong way of remembering the words, but forgetting the meaning that we are discussing here. As Master Hanshan, 1546 to 1623, said in his song on wasting in vain, "It is easier to recite than to understand the sutras. Oral recitation without understanding is in vain." Therefore, Dharma students need to be clear that a Buddhist text containing profound meanings doesn't necessarily have elegant wording and phrasing. In the words of my perfect teacher, Patrul Rinpoche explains that since his lineage guru didn't use exquisite words, he therefore faithfully records the original teaching and writes the explanatory text only using plain and clear language. As said in a Tibetan proverb, the word is just a tool of expression, and the essence of the Dharma is the meaning. Therefore, if the meaning can be expressed with plain words, What is the use of the most exquisite words? If we pay excessive attention to wording and phrasing, we may neglect digging into the meaning. The outcome is that the teaching hardly benefits us. Many academic researchers tend to linger on the verbal expression of the profound topics, such as emptiness or compassion, not knowing that the words are simply the finger that points to the moon. It can be somewhat challenging for them to fully comprehend these topics solely through words. Thus, if they attach undue importance to the words, the finger, they cannot grasp the ultimate meaning of words, the moon. It is of little use to just know the verbal expression without grasping the true meaning. You do need words to express, yet you shouldn't give excessive importance to words. It is important to maintain balance in this regard. Some individuals prioritize meaning over words, considering the way in which the teachings are structured as mere verbal expression without blessing power. They believe that all states of realization are attained through the understanding of meaning. Thus, they undervalue the words and focus heavily on the profound meaning, which is also unreasonable. Some meditation centers in the Tibetan regions place little importance on hearing and contemplation, nor do they advocate learning sutras and shastras by heart. Also, some Chan centers in the mainland areas of China disregard scripture studies, using the following renowned ideas in Chan Buddhism as their support: not relying on words and letters, a special transmission outside of the scriptures, directly pointing to the practitioner's mind, seeing self-nature and attaining Buddhahood. Therefore, they think that not relying on words denotes the highest spiritual state. In fact, Chan Buddhism also relies on words. It is through verbal expression that we get to know those great Chan stories. Moreover, many Chan masters attained realization through reading the Lotus Sutra, the Shurangama Sutra, the Diamond Sutra, the Heart Sutra, and others. Therefore, the word is an indispensable tool, as is said in a Tibetan saying, "The old man of meaning has to rely on the cane of words. Without the cane of words, the old man of meaning can barely walk." It is through words that meaning is expressed. Except for a few highly achieved masters, such as Vimalamitra and lineage masters of Chan Buddhism, who used symbolic gestures to help disciples attain realization, most ordinary people can hardly grasp profound meaning without the help of words. Many people believe they share the same level of faculties as Master Huineng, the sixth patriarch of Chinese Chan Buddhism, so they are reluctant to hear and contemplate the Dharma, as well as to conduct long-term ascetic practice. They expect to attain sudden realization upon reading one sutra or hearing a poem by a Chan master. While this might be hard to achieve, you may want to examine your own faculties. How many afflictive emotions arise from morning to night? How many unwholesome thoughts surface every day? How many wholesome thoughts arise? You must be very clear about the answers. Unless you hear and contemplate the Dharma in a proper sequence, even if you think highly of yourself, I am afraid you are only deceiving yourself. Without relying on words, it will be very hard to realize emptiness and obtain liberation. Nagarjuna says, in the root stanzas of the Middle Way, without recourse to the conventional, the ultimate cannot be shown. Without the realization of the ultimate, there is no gaining of nirvana. The realization of the ultimate truth of emptiness relies on the conventional means. Without the conventional means, one cannot realize profound emptiness. Thus, one cannot attain nirvana. In the same way, while studying the words of my perfect teacher, you also have to rely on words to grasp the meaning. This instruction is also very important for all of you. I hope none of you will fall into the extreme of solely focusing on the meaning or the words. For example, some people disregard the words and only value the meaning, saying, "What is the use of memorizing all the texts? It is useless to do so. You just need to examine the mind, which is enough for your practice." I disagree. If you don't even know the words, then how can you comprehend the meaning? In contrast, some other people consider words essential. They are extremely fond of wording and phrasing in Buddhist texts, yet pay no attention to the meaning. This goes to the other extreme. Buddhists shouldn't fall into either of the two extremes. We should connect words and meaning, which, in fact, pertain to hearing, contemplation, and meditation. Hearing and contemplation depend on words, and meditation counts on meaning. If you integrate hearing, contemplating, and meditating well, you will pay attention to both words and meaning. In his Dharma teachings, Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche often told his fourfold disciples to pay attention to both words and meaning. When attending a Dharma class, some people just close their eyes and listen without reading the corresponding text. However smart they are, they may not remember the whole text. So I am not a big fan of such a manner of listening, no matter who the listener is. Others are obsessed with words, but not with meaning. Words alone are not useful for your practice. It is only when you grasp the meaning that you can eradicate afflictions and attain realization. Therefore, both words and meaning are important. Remembering the words but forgetting the meaning is not good, and neither is remembering the meaning but forgetting the words. Now that you pay attention to both words and meaning, you should also get what's truly taught in sutras, shastras, and the teacher's instructions. If you remember the teaching without identifying its meaning at a different level, the expedient meaning versus the ultimate meaning, the true intention versus the indirect intention, you may become confused about what the words are about. This confusion can steer you away from the true Dharma. As you know, the Buddha gave 84,000 teachings according to beings' different faculties and dispositions. These teachings cover both the expedient meaning and the ultimate meaning. I've covered the difference between expedient meaning and ultimate meaning multiple times in the past, so I won't give extensive explanation here. Briefly speaking, ultimate meaning accords with the ultimate truth of reality, including the emptiness of self in the second turning of the Dharma wheel and the luminous Buddha nature of the third turning, both of which cannot be refuted by any reasoning or philosophy. However, to guide those who are not yet ready to accept the ultimate truth, the Buddha gave the expedient teachings, which include the instruction on the existence of self. Therefore, to really understand the Dharma, you have to study it in a holistic, comprehensive, and systematic manner. Otherwise, if you take a part out of context and consider it as the ultimate teaching, you may get confused by many seemingly contradictory statements in the Buddha's teaching. Some Dharma teachers have said, what accords with your mental events is the ultimate meaning, whereas what doesn't is the expedient. But according to this explanation, our desire for money or someone can be considered the ultimate meaning because such pursuits are consistent with what we want in the mind. Therefore, such an interpretation is inappropriate. If you identify the expedient meaning and the ultimate meaning and distinguish the true intention from the hidden intention, you will understand the Dharma without error. For example, when you read a sutra in which the Buddha says that reciting such and such mantra or Buddha's name can accumulate this or that much merit, you should know that it carries certain hidden intentions. For in-depth understanding, you may consult the 8th chapter of Longchepa's The Great Chariot, a commentary on finding rest in the nature of the mind, which covers the 4 true intentions and the 4 hidden intentions. After understanding these, you won't take all of the Buddha's teachings as the ultimate teaching, just because the Buddha says so. Of course, it is through long-term study that we are able to discern correctly. Many of you have had such insight after studying Mipham Rinpoche's Sword of Wisdom. Therefore, it is very important to have a comprehensive understanding of the Dharma. Many Dharma teachers only understand the literal meaning of the teaching, but have no idea whether it is the ultimate meaning or the expedient meaning. As a result, their understandings and interpretations are likely to deviate from the true meaning. An eminent master of the past said, "To deviate from the sutras by a single word is to speak as Mara, the evil one. To interpret the scriptures literally is to do injustice to the Buddhas of the past, present, and future." Without long-term hearing and contemplating the Dharma, even if you have been teaching non-stop, your interpretation may deviate far from the true meaning. Such teaching brings great fault. For example, it is said in the Sutra of the Great Heap of Jewels, "Kill your father and mother, the king is doubly cleaned. If we conquer the country, together with its surroundings, the people will be pure." The literal meaning of the verse is, "Your father and mother shall be killed, the king and his companions shall be killed, the people and their surroundings shall be destroyed, then you will attain liberation." But this is not the real meaning that the Buddha wants to deliver. Longchen comments in The Great Chariot, "Here father and mother are craving and grasping at samsaric formations. Alaya is a king because it is the support of the various habitual patterns. The Brahmanistic view of a transitory collection as having a self and grasping asceticism as supreme for discipline, training, and virtue are the two things doubly cleaned with the two purities of nature and the incidental. The country and surrounding regions are the 8 consciousnesses with the inner ayatanas of grasping and fixation. Conquering them means that if they are purified, they become enlightened. Without understanding that the Dharma is presented either as the ultimate meaning or the expedient meaning, you may try to understand the Buddha's teachings with your own conceptual thoughts. In this case, you won't grasp the ultimate and profound meaning of the Dharma, leading to layers of misunderstanding. Therefore, please do study the Dharma as a whole, making sure not to take the words too literally and not interpret the meaning carelessly. Studying the Buddha's teachings should follow a proper sequence. This is like the sequential steps of worldly education. Elementary school, middle school, and university are for students with different levels of knowledge. Only after a student finishes the lower levels of education can that student move ahead to the higher education of the university level. It never works that a first grader takes lessons originally designed for third-year university students. The rationale is similar for Buddhist education. Whatever you study, be it Sutrayana or Vajrayana, Tibetan Buddhism or Han Buddhism, you have to follow the proper sequence. If you study out of order, obviously you are not following the sequence properly. Many people haven't yet comprehended the Dharma properly and have little knowledge about the proper sequence, so they believe it is better to hear and practice the highest teachings first. Some so-called Vajrayana practitioners find preliminary practices of ngondro too demanding because it takes quite some time to complete the systematic study and practice of ngondro. Therefore, the practitioners want to take a shortcut. For example, some students somehow manage to receive the highest empowerment from the guru, so they are eligible to listen to the highest teaching of the great perfection. By so doing, they hope to attain realization in no time. However, this is unrealistic. It is like building a mansion over an ice-covered lake, a building that will collapse when the ice melts in the spring. Similarly, if you don't build a solid foundation from the bottom, you can barely reach the higher states of your Dharma study and practice. As Aryadeva says in Lamp that integrates the practices, to help beginning Buddhists eventually grasp the ultimate truth, the Buddha uses this skillful means, which is like the steps of a ladder. The Buddha's teachings progress step by step, like the rungs of a ladder. If you ignore the steps, wishing to reach the sky in one step, you are working against the proper sequence of the teachings. Therefore, make sure you complete the preliminary practices, then advance to the main practice. Among the householders I know, many have been paying attention to the sequential order. They start from systematically studying and practicing the preliminaries, and then once they build a solid foundation, they proceed to the main teaching and practice of Vajrayana. Some others don't respect the sequential order. They don't want to delve into long-term study, and they think they have superior faculties. Therefore, they only talk about the highest states of realization described in the Platform Sutra, the Shurangama Sutra, or in Vajrayana teachings, such as the nature of everything is indivisible, emptiness and luminosity, the nature of the mind is luminous clarity, and the like. Such people make no great effort to practice, including doing prostrations. When they talk to Dharma peers, their conversation is like, "Have you received any of the 4 empowerments? I must receive the transmission of this lineage and that lineage too. I want to practice Tummo, and I want to attain realization soon." It may seem high-spirited to discuss things related to high teachings. However, the practitioner's actual faculties may be very so-so. If a practitioner rarely reflects on the foundational teachings, such as the precious human life, and has no faith in the indescribable blessings of the 3 jewels, the higher states of realization won't arise in their mind. If you mix up the proper sequence, your practice in this life can hardly be successful. Let's bring back the example of worldly education. If you skip elementary and middle school and go directly to university, unless you have very special intelligence, you may end up learning nothing. Nowadays, there are a few masters who advocate it's okay to just remain in calm abiding without studying the text, or it's okay to just meditate on primordial purity without engaging in systematic studies. Such instruction is not right. Nobody can stop you from practicing the Dharma. As it is said, Dharma has no specific owner, so everyone can practice. However, if you don't build a solid foundation, whatever way you practice the Dharma will rarely resonate with your mind. I hope everyone will respect and follow the proper sequence, especially those groups who are currently practicing ngondro collectively. Except for very few practitioners with superior faculties, every one of you must complete ngondro. Soon we will do a survey to see whether someone says they don't need ngondro practice. If there is indeed such a person, I will invite them over for a test. Although I haven't attained a high level of realization, I somehow know the basic teachings and practical experiences in Vajrayana and Chan Buddhism. If it is true that this person doesn't need ngondro, I have no problem exempting them from ngondro practice, and I am also willing to request teachings from them. If this person can indeed give pointing out instructions, we won't feel at all jealous about them. Instead, we are happy to ask them to bestow us empowerment, grant us blessings, and also share their state of realization with us. However, if the person is just blatantly proud, thinking they have greater qualities than they actually possess, and has in fact attained no realization, then that person should practice in the proper sequence if they want to be free from samsara. I have heard several Dharma students boast about their state of practice, saying neither ngondro nor Dharma study is necessary for them. In this case, I'd like to test them in several ways. But dare they come to see me? Maybe they will dare to come. After all, their state of realization is already very high, so they won't be grasping at the choice of coming or not. At this time, we have so many people across the world participating in the group ngondro practice, including some government officials and my school classmates. The merit accumulated through joining this large-scale collective practice must be substantial. Therefore, it is a great pity if, out of pride, you miss such a great opportunity. In short, whatever you are doing, be it hearing, teaching, or practicing the Dharma, make sure it follows the proper sequence. Otherwise, you may encounter many difficulties and conflicts in your Dharma study and practice. For example, if you haven't internalized the basic teachings on the preciousness of human life or the impermanence of life, You will be happy to waste precious time on worldly pursuits every single day. Can higher states of realization then arise in your mind? I'm afraid not. Great masters and practitioners of the past all followed a sequential order. Whenever and wherever a qualified teacher was teaching Ngöndro, they would manage to attend the teachings and complete the preliminaries, even if they had to endure great hardships. Generally speaking, the higher a practitioner's state of realization is, the less likely that they are to despise the foundational practices. Such a practitioner will place great importance on the foundational practices, including the preciousness of human life, the law of karma, and so on. In contrast, some practitioners without any state of realization tend to look down on those foundational practices. They think they are already great practitioners, which is just self-deceiving. It would have been better if they hadn't studied the Dharma, for they wouldn't have had such a wrong attitude toward the foundational practices. Therefore, I hope you refrain from being arrogant and that your practice follows the proper sequence. The Buddha's teachings are errorless and pure, but some people fail to understand them correctly due to their lack of hearing, reflection, and wisdom. For example, it is taught in Chan Buddhism and the Middle Way schools that everything is empty. Upon hearing this, a person may misunderstand the true meaning of emptiness, thinking it is nothingness. As a result, the person may start to reject the law of karma, refuse to pray to the three jewels, conduct no virtuous deeds, and eventually have endless wrong ideas proliferate in their mind. This will spoil the person's mind and debase the teaching. There are many such so-called Buddhists. After sampling a little bit of teachings on emptiness, they think everything is complete nothingness. So they start to do whatever they want without scruple and eventually commit various wrongdoings. Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche once told us a story in class. An old man received a little teaching on emptiness, and he felt everything didn't exist. So, he butchered a goat. During the slaughter, he was talking to the goat. You, the goat being killed, don't exist. The I who is killing you doesn't exist either. So today I'm going to kill you. He was even chanting the mantra of Avalokiteshvara at the same time. Alas, reflecting on emptiness, slaughtering the goat, and reciting the mantra, all at the same time. The old man's behaviors were very contradictory. Maybe he was scared of a bad rebirth, so he chanted the mantra while killing. This case shows that the old man remembered the teachings incorrectly. Dharma teachers and tutors in the audience, please make sure that when you give teachings, you consult the commentaries from eminent masters to ensure your understanding is correct. Otherwise, if you only interpret the words literally without thoroughly understanding the meaning, you may teach wrongly without realizing it. Such teaching will mislead listeners. It is said in the Udana Varga, the fool recites 1,000 chapters, but he can't understand even one verse. The wise understands one verse, then he can grasp 100 meanings. Although a foolish person has read 1,000 chapters of Buddhist scriptures, they don't understand even one verse. In contrast, a wise man understands the meaning of one verse. He can draw inferences from this one verse and grasps 100 other meanings. More specifically, even if the wise man only understands one verse in a text of advice or one truth of life, such as everything is impermanent or all tainted things are suffering, his life direction is already all set. The difference between the fool and the wise doesn't depend on eloquence or social contribution. The key is whether the Dharma has brought positive changes to their own life and eradicated their own afflictions. Nowadays, there are many instances where the Dharma has been interpreted in the wrong way. Some Dharma students think they've understood the meanings of a scripture, but their understanding is actually a misunderstanding. Therefore, when listening to students' presentations, Dharma teachers have to check whether their understanding is right or wrong. Many people, including a few Dharma teachers, have not overcome their worldly habitual tendencies, so they still equate the Buddha's teachings with worldly knowledge. Some Dharma teachers believe they are teaching the Dharma, yet what they teach is not even close to the doctrines of Buddhism. Some other teachers think they've grasped the secret meaning of the Buddha and that they teach fairly well. However, their teachings are not really the Dharma. Therefore, it is very important to avoid remembering the teachings incorrectly. To summarize, you should avoid remembering the words but forgetting the meaning, or remembering the meaning but forgetting the words. You should also avoid remembering both but with no understanding, remembering them out of order, or remembering them incorrectly. It is very important to avoid these 5 wrong ways of remembering. Whatever text you are studying, make sure you first adjust your attitude and conduct. By doing so, you will be able to grasp the meaning. Therefore, before proceeding to the main text of the words of my perfect teacher about all the preliminary practices, if you can follow Patrul Rinpoche's advice on how to listen to teachings, it can be of great help to your own study, as well as to the teachings you may deliver in the future. Just casually listening to teachings is not enough. You have to study the Dharma comprehensively and consistently. Make sure to remember everything, the words, the meaning, and the order of the teachings, properly and without any mistakes. When encountering difficult or lengthy teachings, such as Ornament of Clear Realization, the root stanzas of the Middle Way, or the last few chapters of 400 stanzas on the Middle Way, please don't give up just because you can hardly understand the text. Some time ago, while studying the 9th chapter, the Wisdom chapter, of the Way of the Bodhisattva, many lay Dharma students surrendered. They were doing fairly well when studying chapters 1 to 8, but the 9th chapter defeated them. Well, you shouldn't surrender so easily. Even when you study worldly knowledge, you shouldn't give in too soon, let alone Dharma study that requires more perseverance. If Dharma students encounter a difficult teaching that they don't understand today, then they should persist in studying it tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, until they can fully understand it. Some Khenpos at Larungar are truly inspiring. In the course of their studying and practicing the Dharma, they persist in finding answers for their questions. Sometimes the questions remain unsolved for a long while, but they keep on checking scriptures and consulting teachers until they find the answers. Such an attitude is indispensable for our study of the Dharma. We shouldn't give up after a few difficulties. The Wisdom chapter is indeed hard to understand for a first-timer. When I first studied the chapter, I also found it challenging, but I persisted, and gradually I started to grasp the meaning of the chapter. Meanwhile, when encountering texts that are short or relatively easy to understand, such as the 37 Practices of a Bodhisattva or the Words of My Perfect Teacher, you shouldn't undervalue these as just elementary. Instead, you should study well and internalize the teachings. Some Buddhists find lengthy and difficult teachings hard to comprehend, so they don't want to study them. Meanwhile, they find short and simple teachings too easy, so they don't bother studying them. When encountering short and simple teachings, they complain, "I already went through the 37 practices of bodhisattvas, so it is not necessary for me to study it," or "I've memorized the way of the bodhisattva, so I don't want to study it again." Some texts are relatively easy to understand, but it is not that easy to apply the teachings to our practice. Practitioners should remember and internalize those teachings in both this life and many lives yet to come. If you want to study neither the fundamental nor the advanced teachings, then you will end up receiving no teachings at all. When teaching the great perfection of the Manjushri, Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche said, "The monk is not able to practice the lengthy and advanced teachings. The monk doesn't want to practice the short and fundamental teachings. Upon his death, the monk hasn't practiced anything." Such behavior is common among many people. Therefore, whether the teaching is lengthy or short, difficult or simple, you should appreciate them all as precious nectar. Whoever is teaching the Dharma, you should listen attentively. Even a great master like Patrul Rinpoche listened to teachings on the preliminary practices more than 20 times. Those of us with very ordinary faculties may have to listen to the teachings 50 or 60 times before understanding them. Nowadays, many people tend to make this mistake. They prefer to attend teachings they've never heard before, while being reluctant to hear teachings they've heard before. This is not right. In the past, many eminent masters vowed to study the way of the Bodhisattva, or the words of my perfect teacher, 100 times in this lifetime. Therefore, they happily join teachings, no matter who is giving them. You should adopt this attitude as well. If this is your mindset, you'll receive benefits from whichever teaching you attend, regardless of who is teaching it. Otherwise, you may encounter difficulties in studying and practicing the Dharma. So, never become weary of listening to teachings. In short, when listening to the teaching, we should accurately remember both words and meaning in the right order and with everything properly linked together.